Welcome, everyone, to the Full Court Trap Podcast, the final weekend preview of the regular season. This time next weekend, Blake will be talking about conference championship games and getting ready for Selection Sunday. How excited does that make you? Because I'm jacked.
Dude, it's like The Rock says and how he's been doing with Final Boss.
The final
Like, he don't
boss.
even have to say anything. Just chills. Absolute chills.
Yeah, best
I can't
time
wait,
of year.
dude.
We
We've
got
already been blessed with some mid-major ones that have been going crazy that still ain't done. Then you got next week's Power 4 conferences and such starting. So it's a huge time of the year, dude.
Yeah, you led right into what I was saying. There's going to be a bid punched in the OVC tomorrow. First team to get into the field. We got 4 more mid-majors getting their tickets punched on Sunday. We'll have a whole other video to talk about that. We're going to keep this strictly with the ranked games we've got going on, the end of the SEC regular season, which promises to be a movie. The conference has been loaded all season long, and we're going to see how those teams end up finishing out in the standings. We'll reflect on our video that we made guessing the SEC standings all those weeks back and see how wrong we were. But for now, let's get straight into the game action starting tomorrow with what is probably the biggest game of the weekend, Alabama versus Auburn, the rematch. Aiden Holloway's homecoming to the jungle. I'm sure the fans are going to treat him with the utmost respect and class. Bruce Pearl put out a statement today saying, let's keep it classy in the end of the home slate. I think they're anticipating a bit of a rowdy environment there, as it always is with Alabama, and then you got a former player walking into the gym. If only we had Brandy here to talk about that. She's going to be on site, though, so we'll get some content out of her. But Blake, speaking strictly on this game, obviously we know what happened the first time these teams met in Tuscaloosa. Auburn really controlled the game, withstood Alabama's runs throughout the entirety of it, and found a way to come out with a 9-point win. So this time around, obviously the tables have turned. Auburn's got the home court advantage. They're welcoming Alabama to their building, which has been one of the hardest buildings to win at in college basketball in recent memory. So to say Nate Oates' squad has a bit of a challenge on their hands tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 would be an understatement.
Yeah, that's definitely an understatement just because how elite Auburn's been at home. Like, they're 16-1 right now this season at home. This is going to be a clash. Like, we already saw last time these two teams played of, like, two of the highest offensive power teams in the country. Auburn, they're 5th in the nation for points per possession, while Alabama's 22nd. Then you look at effective field goal percentage. They're right neck and neck. Auburn 23rd in the nation. Bama 18th in the nation. And then Auburn just does a really tremendous job of protecting the ball. They're both these teams too rank in the top 15 right now in scoring percentage per game. So I mean, these are elite teams offensively. Defensively, though, I think an eye test can tell you this one. Alabama, awful on defense. They allow, I think it's almost a full point per possession. They're sitting at 160th in the nation, while Auburn's top 50 in the nation defensively for points per possession. This team, Alabama defensively is really bad. Auburn is top 50 in the nation, and that's really, really good when you're talking a team that's just better offensively as well. And when you're doing it on both sides of the floor, don't know how you stop a team like that. Props to Duke for doing it earlier this year. Props to Florida for doing it. Both teams, national championship contenders, sitting right along with Auburn and then possibly Alabama. But I do think Auburn has an edge in this one. I think they sweep the season series. I just think Auburn is that much better. And with how they've been playing, like, we thought they were coasting like we talked about last episode, but I mean, this team's far from coasting along. They beat up on Ole Miss. They went into Rupp and beat up on Kentucky. Miles Kelly, Tahad Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara. Like, these guards are insanely good. They're great college players, fun to watch. And then you add in a National Player of the Year contender, top 2 guy in the race, Janai Broome. He struggled the past couple games, but I mean, I don't think it's anything to be worried about, like we talked about last episode, too. Like, this team just got it, and I think the jungle's going to be rocking come tomorrow night, and I do think Auburn's going to get a bit of a revenge for a second time against Aiden Holloway.
Yeah, there was some big news about 2 hours ago as well on the Auburn side of things. Bruce Pearl told ESPN that everyone's available for tomorrow's game, meaning that Denver Jones, he's back from injury. He obviously missed out on their trip to Texas A&M. Suffered a little bit of an ankle hiccup there on his right ankle, but he seems to be doing better now. That's going to be big for them in containing Mark Sears, because the first time around in this matchup, I remember we got on here and we talked about how Denver Jones really had Mark Sears in his pocket the whole game. That was when Bruce came out afterward and made his big statement that he was the best defensive guard in the country. And, I mean, it's hard to argue against that with the way that he played in that matchup. So that's going to be a big thing for them. Both these squads coming off losses, so obviously both these teams have an equal amount of hunger. Throw in the fact that it's a rivalry game. I really think that this one has a chance to be even better than the first time around, in my opinion. I do think that Alabama's defensive concerns, that's a big focal point for me, because the last time they matched up against Auburn, they gave up about 94 points. And as a whole on the year, they're averaging about 80.7 points against right now. So they definitely are prone to a team getting hot and just being able to put up numbers, whereas Auburn only gives up around about 69.2 points against per game. So I think when you mix in the home crowd, the questions overall about Alabama's defensive abilities, and the fact that you're getting an Auburn team that's at full strength and they're coming off a loss that they really probably didn't anticipate and kind of went into the game on cruise control, I think Bruce is going to have them fired up. I think that atmosphere is going to have them fired up. And I agree with you, Blake. I think they complete the sweep. Although I do think that this time around, this game, it might be a little bit better, honestly, because I just think Alabama's going to be more prepared after seeing Auburn once already, and A&M kind of laid out the blueprint on how you can try and contain them. Granted, Denver Jones wasn't available. But if Alabama's going to win this game, Blake, we'll turn it to them for a second before we move on. What's going to happen for them going into that raucous environment? Because it's obviously a very tall task for Nate Oates' crew.
There's a few things. Like, a couple big things that stand out to me is, like, Alabama at home shot 5 of 26 against Auburn, 19% from three. I mean, like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you this. Like, if Alabama's not hitting their shots, then this team, their ceiling just goes a whole nother level lower. And when you're talking going against one of the toughest defenses, one of the toughest teams in general in the country, Auburn, you have to hit your shots, because if you're not, this Auburn team's going to make you pay. And, I mean, last time they played, Auburn definitely made Alabama pay and had 94 points on the night. So that's a huge key going into tomorrow. I think they have to keep Janai Broome in check. Last time these two teams played, he absolutely feasted. I mean, he shot 7 of 16, which is all right. He made a couple threes. He had 19 points, and he had 14 boards on that one. So I think shutting him down like A&M did, and how Kentucky really did too, they just couldn't stop those guards. But like, if they can hone in on Janai Broome, it's very feasible that Alabama could come away with this one. And another thing is Mark Sears obviously has to play a lot better than he did last time these two teams played. 2 of 11 from 3 and 4 of 17 from the field isn't going to cut it when you're in, like, preseason National Player of the Year talks. And, like, even right now, you could potentially toss him in the mix of National Player of the Year candidates, because he's been a great player all year, honestly. I mean, he had the one game where he got benched, which was kind of a puzzle to us at one time, but I mean, he looks just as good as he did before. And so him making shots is obviously going to have to be a big key. And I think those other guys around him are going to have to also make shots, because Chris Youngblood sucked last time these two teams played. 2 of 6. Like, he didn't get a ton of looks, and he's been a really good player for Auburn lately. So he has to hit some shots. Then lastly, like Cliff Omoruyi. I mean, I said it about Janai Broom, how he went off. Cliff Omoruyi is going to have to be the guy in the interior, and so is Grant Nelson because Dylan Cardwell, he's not super skilled, but I mean, he's still a quality basketball player at the college level. Like, he's a really good leader. He knows his role, and he's going to be able to hit Janai Broom on open looks too down in the post if they're out there at the same time. So, this front court for Alabama definitely going to have to lock in tomorrow. And I think their bench players are obviously going to have to hit some shots too. It's a lot to ask going into one of the toughest arenas in college basketball tomorrow. So, they're going to have to just lock in come tomorrow.
Another factor, too, in this game I didn't mention, Darion Reed for Alabama, it's looking like he's going to be out as well for this one. So that's an injury problem popping up there for Nate Oates. And this first time around in this game, Alabama, they just started off so slow, and ultimately that kind of felt like it was their undoing in that game because they started off so slow. They tried to build momentum and get runs going, and it just was too much to overcome. And then Janai was playing some of the best basketball we've seen out of him this year. Mm-hmm. And then you mix in, too, something we didn't mention. Chaney Johnson came off the bench in that game, and he was really, really good. He put up 14-5. He got into those spots where Dylan Cardwell was really kind of ineffective the whole game and showed up and showed out. So I think you really got to put an emphasis on doing the best you can to slow down Janai. But then if you accomplish that, you can't let the guys like Chaney Johnson kill you off the bench or Tahad Pettiford kill you off the bench because those guys are more than talented enough to come off and do that. And this Auburn squad, they're so deep and talented all around. It's just a very tall order to go into their gym and try and pull it off. But we'll see what happens. It's definitely going to be intriguing. I'm very excited to see how it turns out. But we got some other games to hit on as well, so let's not waste any more time. Transitioning it over to the Big East, St. John's is going to Marquette. Rick Pitino, he's been doing a little bit of a tour around NYC recently, going on Jimmy Fallon last night. He's making all the stops. Hollywood Rick, he's back, baby. The St. John's Red Storm is the talk of the town over in New York City, and now they got to go to Marquette in the road environment to close out the regular season. Blake, how do we see this game going for Rick Pitino and the boys heading down there to take on Shaka Smart and Cam Jones?
I mean, this is going to be a gritty type of game, I feel like. Both these teams' offense isn't anything like super spectacular. They rank like semi-lower in a lot of rankings offensively, but both these teams are legit defensively. St. John's is top 10 in points per possession on the defensive end. And then they don't allow like high percentage scoring against them. Both these two teams, they generate a lot of turnovers. So I think going into tomorrow, it's going to be who can get the most stops, really, and who can obviously get the baskets or buckets when needed. I think Zuby Ejiofor is going to have to be a key guy tomorrow, and I think obviously R.J. Lewis for St. John's is also going to have to be another leader because he's been legit all season long. He's really becoming one of my favorite college players right now. This St. John's team definitely, I do think they pull this one off. Marquette's kind of been on the decrease, like on the decline lately. They're not as like hot as they were early on. I don't know if that's like a lack of concentration, lack of effort going down the stretch, or if they just like teams are catching up to them. So, yeah, I think St. John's gets this one.
This is a St. John's team, too. They really perform well on the road. They're 7-2 in away games this year, and they've got the Big East title clinched outright. So, really, they don't have anything to play for in this one. If you're Marquette, this is a huge opportunity for you to get a resume win, to take out the top dog in your conference. And I think this could be a tricky one where it's on the road, although St. John's does have a pretty great track record this year going on the road. Kadary Richmond, he's been playing phenomenal over the course of the last 10 games. He's averaging 16 points and 7 boards. He's been on one for them. He's a stud. Cam Jones, he's still been doing his thing. He's averaging around 18 a game right now. I definitely think that this one is probably going to be a little bit low scoring. I'm not sure. I think that Marquette, if they do want to come out on top, they can't let St. John's muck it up and get physical with them and play that brand of just overwhelming defense.
Smash mouth basketball.
Yeah, they can't get into a smash mouth contest with Rick Pitino because that'll come back to punch him in the mouth. That's exactly
literally like
DNA. Yeah, no pun intended, but that's like the DNA of this team. And if that's the pace that this game gets thrown into, St. John's is going to have control.
Yeah,
this is a tough one to get a read on. I want to go out and pick the upset and say Marquette, but with St. John's just being so good on the road and just the way they've been playing lately, it's hard to bet against them going against anyone right now, really. They're one of the hottest teams in the country. They're looking prime for a 2 or 3 seed in March. They've got the Big East title outright. I think that this is going to be a game where you see a guy like Kadary Richmond really live up to the moment going up against a guy like Cam Jones. I expect Zuby Ejiofor to have a big game as well in the paint. Marquette, David Joplin, he's been pretty solid for them when it comes to kind of a forward/paint type of role player, but I think Zuby's going to take advantage of that. So you give me St. John's in this one. I think it'll be a close one. I do think it's going to be a little bit low scoring. I think St. John's will be able to dictate the pace, but it's going to be one worth watching for sure. This is a very important game for Marquette to try and bolster their resume as we get close to a week to Selection Sunday now. But going back over to the SEC, Kentucky, the Wildcats on my chest over here, they're taking on Missouri. Blake, we know how shorthanded Kentucky is, so we won't dive into just how much that'll affect this game. We've worn that out. We know what this Kentucky team is as currently constructed. Blake's got the gear on too, but yeah, we know what this Kentucky team is as currently constructed. No more Jackson Robinson, no Kirk Kriisa. So just talking strictly with what Mark Pope's working with right now, Blake, is it going to be enough to go into a road environment at Missouri against a team that's really thrived at home? And I mean, we saw them put up 100+ on Alabama in a big time win. So I think this is a very daunting task if you're a fan of the Wildcats.
I do feel like it's a little too much to ask, just because of how red hot Missouri's been lately. Kentucky, like, it doesn't take, like I said earlier, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to like figure this one out. Kentucky's defense is awful. They've shown some signs of life here down the stretch, but I mean, against quality opponents, they kind of faltered to their opponent and didn't look great. I mean, against LSU was down a few guys, and they looked great defensively, but I mean, they could also be at the hands of LSU being shorthanded. But like, both these teams are legit on the offensive end. Like, they rank in the top percentile, and like basically every offensive statistic, I believe. Like, both these teams can score. I think the biggest question that going into tomorrow is like Otega Owe has to stay out of foul trouble. I feel like that's been a big issue for him coming down the stretch this season. Kobe Bray all season long has been really bad on the road. I think he shot like, 29% from three, I think, the other day when I checked. And that was like after the LSU game. So 29% from three on the road is not something that's like characteristic for him in recent years. Like, his entire college career, he's been a 35% plus shooter from behind the arc on the road. So it's definitely not characteristic of him. If he can break out of that semi-slump, then, I mean, I think the ceiling of this Kentucky team going into tomorrow and a noon tip-off against one of the best teams in America could possibly lean towards Kentucky, but I'm going to stick with Missouri in this one just because of how much better they are on the defensive end. And I just think, I don't know, Kentucky not having Jackson Robinson is probably going to hurt them. But, I mean, I don't know. Just Missouri's a lot better at home compared to Kentucky being on the road this season. Kentucky, I think, is like 4-7. And then I think Missouri was like, what were they? Like 13-1, I think. Something crazy. 17-1. Hold on, I got to
They're
check.
18-1 in home games.
18 and
Missouri is
18 and
yeah.
2. 18-2, and then Kentucky's 4-7 on the road. So I mean, when you compare those, that's like comparing apples to oranges. Like that, Kentucky is far worse on the road compared to Missouri at home. Missouri this year, like that program's taken a whole another step towards greatness under Dennis Gates. Like he's doing really good things there, and like I think going into tomorrow, I think that team has the edge in this one.
This is going to be a big game for SEC tournament seeding because if Kentucky loses this one, they drop to an 8 seed in Nashville. But if they win, anything from a 5 to a 7, I believe, is possible.
Yeah.
I think they're out of reach for the double bye. They put themselves in too much of a hole. But it's not like these two teams aren't playing for anything because you want to get a good standing when you go into Nashville. You want to put yourself on a favorable path, and nobody wants to take on that 8 spot where you're looking at if you win your first round game, you're staring down Auburn right in the next round. That's not a spot I'd like to see Kentucky going into in Nashville. But you mentioned these teams being very efficient from 3. Missouri, they're averaging 9 made 3-pointers a game. That's only 0.7 more than Kentucky that's got 8.3. And these teams, they just shoot at a very high clip. Kentucky, they're averaging around 48% from the field this season. And I think this is going to be a very, very high scoring battle. I think that overall defense is not going to play a huge factor. That may just get phased out with the pace that this game gets into, where both these teams like to get up and down. They like to get active from the 3-point line. And I don't know. I mean, Kentucky has been bad on the road, but at the same time, they've gotten some very impressive wins on the road as well. Like going into Mississippi State, they got that one done in a hostile environment. They beat Tennessee when they were shorthanded. Obviously, Jackson Robinson was still in the fold then, but had some guys missing in that one. They beat an Oklahoma team that's looking to get on the tournament line right now, that's got quality players like Jeremiah Fears. They did that one shorthanded. So Kentucky, all of their road losses have really been puzzling ones, like the Georgia one, the Vandy one, games that you think they really shouldn't have dropped that they ultimately did. But when it comes to playing up to their competition, Blake, I think Pope gets them ready to go just as good as any coach in the country. It really is a team where it feels like they elevate their play as their opponent gets a little bit more tough. The only game that they really haven't met the challenge, in my opinion, this year was that Auburn game. But a lot of teams haven't been able to meet the challenge of Auburn. So as far as picking a winner goes, yeah, I'm going to go with Kentucky, actually. I think this is going to be one of those weird games where Kentucky just finds a way, like they have all season long, in spots where you haven't really expected them to get one done. I think this might be another spot where they get it. I could be very wrong, and Missouri could come out and just blow the doors off a shorthanded Kentucky team. I could very easily see that happen if things go the wrong way. But at the same time, I just think that Kobe Brea, he's going to step up in this spot. Otega Owe, if you keep him out of foul trouble, I think that that's going to be helpful for them because we saw in the Alabama game, Kentucky was really competing early, but then Otega got into foul trouble. It really threw everything out of whack for him, and it just went downhill from there. So I think it's going to be really important to keep Otega in the fold there. Kobe Brea, he's going to have to take on a lot more of the scoring responsibilities with Jackson gone now, like we've mentioned. And this is going to be a very telling sign of what Kentucky's working with as we head into postseason play. Because Missouri, this is going to be a quality team. It's going to be on par with the competition you're going to see in the SEC tournament and going into the NCAA tournament. So we're going to learn a lot about Kentucky tomorrow, I think, and what exactly the ceiling is on this group. And Missouri, I think we'll learn about Missouri as well. What were you saying?
Missouri's defense has taken like a huge fall too. Like they've allowed, I think in the past games they've allowed 90 plus in the past 4. So like, I mean that definitely has a telltale signs of a Kentucky win. But I just think I don't know. It's definitely going to be a great game. We will for sure be tuned in. I'm going to be tuned in at work. I don't give a rat's ass. I'm going to be watching on my phone, just like I will probably every college game, 1 to 6 tomorrow.
That's what this time of year is all about. Hoops at work. We got
Yeah.
games on all day long. We're locked in on March. Locked on March, as Cole Adams would say over there on the Twitter world. But moving on, we've got a Duke and UNC. Man, Blake, if this were any other year, this would be the first game we're talking about when it comes to a weekend preview. But I mean,
Yeah.
we're not going to beat the dead horse with North Carolina. I mean, we know what this team is at this point. We know what Duke is. Duke's been dominant. They're rolling through ACC play. The only slip up coming against Clemson. This is really, I mean, we could talk about how great Duke is all day. Cooper Flagg, Colin Knipple, Tyrese Proctor's back from injury, Kaman Malawach. I mean, we know what Duke is rolling with here, Blake. But UNC, I mean, this is kind of a must win game for them because we're going to talk about bubble teams here in a bit. They're currently projected on the first four out territory. And this is, I mean, it's regular season finale, obviously, so it's your last chance to go out with a good taste in your mouth in the regular season. And then ACC tournament play coming up. If they don't get this one here, I think that's probably the nail in the coffin for the tournament hopes because I don't see them making a run in the ACC tournament. They might make it to the semifinals just because that league is so subpar. But if they run into like a Louisville, a Clemson, or even Duke again, I just think that's going to be curtains for them because they just don't have the talent this year.
They've been hot too lately. Like they went to the bigger lineup. I think they put Drake Powell at the 3, and then like mixed in Jalen Withers at the 4. I think Allen Lubin at the 5 or Jalen Washington. I forget, but that's worked out for them. They've been a lot hotter recently from the field. They look a lot better as a team right now. Granted, they've been playing some pretty bad teams. They're power forward teams in the ACC, but I mean, this is 2025, and like these teams are bad, and like they're comparable to like some mid-major type of teams that aren't good. So I don't know if you know the movie Miracle on 34th Street, but I think they're gonna have to make a remake for tomorrow's game, Miracle on Tobacco Road, because like they're definitely gonna need a miracle for this game. I just think Duke is that much better than UNC this year, and yeah, I still don't know if it's going to be close tomorrow. I think Duke wins by 10 plus, just because of the fact that like last time these two teams played, it was a 17-point win. I think it gets worse than that, just because like they're healthy now. Duke is. They're healthy at the right time of the year. Cooper Flagg is playing out of his mind. I think he's starting to run away with the National Player of the Year award. So, yeah, I think this team's clicking right at the right time. And UNC, they're clicking at the right time, but I just don't know if it's early enough for them to make it to March. And I don't think they're comparable whatsoever to how good this Duke team is.
Simply put, Duke's going to put BTA tomorrow night. I don't expect anything less. North Carolina.
I wish I had a belt on me so I could just hit it.
Todd Penford. Whack.
Wah.
Hey, I as a Kentucky fan, it paid me to see that, but I wouldn't be telling you the truth if I didn't think that was hilarious.
It was funny, dude.
That was pretty funny. But yeah, I would love to get on here and just gas up North Carolina and say, this is your moment. You're going to get into the tournament and make a statement here. But I just can't do it. Duke's playing too good. It's 1A with Auburn and then 1B with Duke. And then you've got Florida and the other guys running out that top-heavy part of the college basketball realm. But it's just too much. I don't think UNC is going to have enough to get it done. If they were going to find a way to get this one done, it's going to take a vintage R.J. Davis performance. Ian Jackson's going to have to step up and have a big-time performance, which he's very capable of. We've seen it in spots. And then you've got to rely on a guy like Seth Trimble to chip in a consistent probably like 8 to 12 points, and that front court has to be at least serviceable. They can't be as bad as they've been if Carolina wants to get this done. It just feels like there's a lot of things that would have to happen that you would consider to be an anomaly for that team, whereas Duke's just the surefire bet. You know what you're getting out of them at this point. And I'm just excited to see the ACC tournament get underway and see what happens with Duke as they go through an actual tournament format and see if anybody poses a threat to them like a Clemson or a Louisville if they manage to stumble into them. It's going to be interesting to see how Duke takes form now that they're getting out of this cruise control mode in the ACC and they're going to be heading into the postseason. But I think they're going to complete the sweep of the rivalry series against UNC, and I will be very shocked if anything less happens. But if it does, I mean, we'll hop on here and give UNC their props and say that we were wrong because we've definitely set ourselves up to get clipped here. But
Yeah.
moving back to the Big 12.
Some may call it clip farming.
Yeah, some are calling it clip farming. Is the full court trap clip farming? People are asking. But moving on to the Big 12, Houston at Baylor. Blake, a couple of days ago, I believe it may have been to start the week, I saw Baylor. They were in projected bubble talks sitting at like last 4 buys, but now they've kind of bought themselves some wiggle room. I think they're back safely in the field. I'll be very surprised if this Baylor team misses out on the tournament. They've been underwhelming this year, but I mean, here's a chance to gift wrapped it to you on your home court where you've already taken out Kansas this year, except now you get the juggernaut that is Houston that looks primed for a 1 seed heading into the tournament. I'd be very surprised if they let that slip away at this point, at least. Do we see Scott Drew finding some magic over there in Waco and finding a way to get this one done, or is it going to be another big night for Kelvin Sampson's Big 12 champions?
I think we can. I don't know. I don't think we can really say that Baylor's going to win this game just because of how dominant Houston is. That team is so stacked. Juwan Roberts has been a really solid piece. He's been there for a while at Houston. He knows his role, and he plays his role very well under Kelvin Sampson. Milo Suzon looks like one of the better guards in the Big 12, perhaps maybe the country. Who else am I? I'm missing someone. Oh, Emmanuel Sharp. I don't know how I forgot him. Really good 3-point shooter. And when he's on, like, he's hard to stop. Terrence Arsenault off the bench, really good defensive player. He's not really a high-volume scorer, but, I mean, on the defensive end, he's very lengthy and really good perimeter defender. Yeah, this team is just really good. Baylor is, at times, really iffy. They got 6 quad 1 wins this year. They beat Arkansas early in the year and at a neutral site. They beat St. John's in a freaking shootout, 99-98. They got blown out to Tennessee at a neutral site. And their only big win, I would say, only big wins have been Arizona. Or no, they lost to Arizona, my bad. The only big win they really have at home looks like Kansas, 81-70. And then they lost at home to Arizona by 7. Let's see, they lost by 4 on the road to BYU.
They piled up quite a bit of losses here. 12 losses for Scott Drew.
And the last time
not very common.
Almost a month to the tomorrow, they played Houston and they lost by 11. So I don't think this game's going to be as big of a deficit, but I do think Houston wins this one. VJ Edgecombe, he's looking more like the lottery pick we thought he was going to be early in the season. Like, he looks a lot more comfortable now. He's got his groove going. He's averaging almost 15 a game on almost 44% from the field. Against TCU, he had 18. Cincinnati had 18. Arizona had 24. There's a couple games where, like, he wasn't on, but he wasn't, like, really the main score, like, guy, like, go-to guy in that game, I should say. His shots weren't hitting, but in those other games he was on. So if VJ Edgecombe, Jaden Nunn, guys like that, Langston Love, Roach, if they can contribute at a good rate, then, I mean, maybe the game changes, but I think just Houston is just too good of a defensive team, man. Like, I think they got Final Four aspirations. I do think they're that good this year. I think they get over that hump of, like, Elite 8 exit, Sweet 16. And I think this is a year they can make a big run.
Yeah, and like we've said with Houston's defense, I mean, that's always been a known commodity with them. That's what Kelvin Sampson's built the program on.
Just bread and butter.
Yeah, now you factor in the fact that he's got guys that can make big shots like a Milo Suzan, Emmanuel Sharp. You got Juwan Roberts in the paint. That there's just guys that can go get theirs on any given night all over that team, which is a really encouraging sign as we head into March because that's been a big question in years past. Where are they going to get their offense from? I think it's clear at this point where they're going to get their offense from. They've got a really cohesive system going there right now, really balanced attack. They're going to be a fun team to follow as we head into the Big 12 tournament and going into the March too. I could very easily see this being the year they get back to the Final Four and finally get over that hump of Elite Eight and Sweet 16 exits. But keeping it in the Big 12, Blake, I'll keep this one a little bit short and sweet. Kansas, it's getting scary. This could be an 0-3 finish to Big 12 play with losses to Texas Tech, Houston, and tomorrow they host Arizona. If they don't get something figured out here, it's going to be a 0-3 finish for Bill Self's squad, and they're going to be looking at a 19-12 record as we head into the Big 12 tournament and the NCAA tournament. Very uncharted waters here for the Jayhawks, Blake.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the icing on the cake on a underwhelming season for Kansas. I think they're going to lose yet another game at Allen Fieldhouse. Arizona, they've been really good this season. Like, they're top 25 right now in the nation. Caleb Love, when he's on, I mean, sure, he's known as an inefficient shot chucker, my bad. But, I mean, he still scores at a high volume. Like, he's averaging almost 17 a game. Toby Awaka's been really good. Hunter Dickinson averaging almost 17 a game. But here down the stretch, I feel like he struggled somewhat, not scoring very efficiently. Like, well, from the field, I guess he's been semi-efficient. But, like, he's not shooting threes good at all. I mean, he's had some dominant performances here down the stretch. But, I mean, it's just, I don't know if this team, the construction is right. Like, we've talked about it a million times. Him, KJ Adams, Flory Badunga, like, running those three at the same time, which they did recently, not a good idea. And I don't want to, like, rain on his parade, but, I mean, Hunter Dickinson is probably time to, like, I think that era needs to go just because, like, I mean, it's kind of taking its toll on this program just because, like, he's not someone that elevates that team. Like, they need guys that are cohesive and not just guys that are big portal names instead of, like, going for fit, which is what Bill Self did. He went for, like, portal rankings instead of actual fit. So that was their big downfall. And I think it continues going into tomorrow. Arizona, like I said, they're a really good team. They've been playing good basketball lately, too. And Kansas at home, won't lie to you, not scary this year at all. And
Yeah,
I
not
think
this year.
this is going to be just one of those games, too. I think that Arizona can get enough momentum going their way and bring home a victory.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an 0-3 finish for the Jayhawks as well. I mean, if we had $1 for every time we've talked about the issues with this Kansas squad, we'd have a decent amount of income coming in our way at this point. I mean, there's an abundance of problems with this team. It's not getting fixed. It's too late in the year. And there's going to be a mass exodus at the end of this year when it comes to that wave of guys that's been in this program for a while, like your DeJuan Harris, Hunter Dickinson, and then KJ Adams, obviously. New blood's going to come into the program. I think that's what Bill Self really needs at this point. He's kind of been beating this same roster construction into the ground the last couple of years, and it may just be time for a fresh start for all parties involved. And I think that might be beneficial, and that'll get them back on the right track for next year. But as far as tomorrow's concerned, give me Arizona in a close one. If they can get this going at the tempo they like to do, where they get out and fast break and they score on you at will, they're one of the best fast break scoring teams in the country. This one could get bad for Kansas real quick, and I kind of feel like that might be the way that this one's headed. But Blake, on Sunday, March 9th, that'll be a week before Selection Sunday, we've got a big-time matchup to close out the Big Ten regular season. The undisputed champions of the Big Ten, outright champions, Michigan State, they're hosting their rival Michigan. Michigan, they were competing for a share of that Big Ten title, but a loss to Illinois really kind of made that slip out of their hands down the stretch, and Michigan State just took care of business against Iowa earlier this week to clinch the regular season title in the Big Ten. This is a huge matchup, obviously, just for bragging rights in this rivalry as a whole. But Michigan, I think this game's important for them as they head into postseason play because as of lately, Blake, this Michigan team really has not been playing the best basketball of their season.
No, I mean, you could almost just say this Michigan team's been playing like a mid team, like an average team. And Michigan State, it's going to be a scary game for Michigan because Michigan State, they're at home and they've been on fire this season. They're on a, I think, 6-game winning streak right now with wins against Michigan, actually, on the road at Michigan and a 13-point win. They beat Maryland on the road. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Purdue. They beat Illinois. Like, this team, I don't know. Did I say they beat Wisconsin? Yeah, I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, those, 4 games in a row, the Purdue, Michigan, Maryland, and Wisconsin, that just shows you how good this Michigan State team is right now. And going into March Madness, that's going to be a big thing for that team. They're going to have a lot of momentum. Michigan State's the far better team on both ends of the floor. And I do think this game's going to be closer than last time. But I think Michigan State ends up with a win here. And I think Namari Burnett for Michigan, he's going to have to be a big guy for Michigan tomorrow if they want to stand a chance.
Yeah, that's the thing that you were leading into. Michigan, it just feels like they've been too reliant on Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf recently. And, I get those guys are very talented, 2 of the better big men in the country. But these guards, like Trey Donaldson and Namari Burnett, they've got to get something going as well because it's just not going to work in the tournament if you're relying on your big men. Those guards, they've got to provide something. They really haven't been doing that recently, and that's a big reason you can point to their struggles. I mean, I was watching them against Illinois, and just nothing was going right for them. They couldn't figure anything out. And against Maryland as well, they just kind of got dominated the whole game. It was a close on the scoreboard, but Maryland had control for the most part. And I think that Michigan State, they're going to get this one done. I think they complete the sweep of Michigan for the regular season finale. I love what Tom Izzo's done with this program. I mean, I've mentioned it many times before. To think about where this team was heading out of the Champions Classic to where they are right now, it's just unbelievable to see what Izzo's done, the job that he's done with this program. And I'm just really excited to see what they can do heading into March because we've said it before, Blake, January, February, we know what comes next, Izzo.
The month of Izzo.
And the month of Izzo. And I think he's going to put a statement on it, and I think they get a win here and head into the Big Ten tournament feeling good about themselves with that number 1 seed in the Big Ten, looking prime for a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament at the moment. But Speaking of NCAA tournament, let's talk about the bubble, Blake. My favorite part of the weekend previews, we get to talk about the teams that are in danger, like the meme of that guy sitting in the fire saying, "I'm in danger," as he laughs. These are the teams that have to get a result. We'll go to our guy Joey Brackets over at ESPN and list off what it's looking like as of today.
The way you said that made it sound like we're cutting to a segment for him. Hey, Joe Lenardi, come in.
Yeah, wait, hold on a second. I just got a notification. Lenardi's getting ready to be admitted to the call. Okay. Yeah, he's coming, guys. Don't worry. He'll show up eventually.
Big trust,
but while we wait for him, let me read off the bubble teams. So, first of all, we got the last 4 byes. Utah State, Georgia, Ohio State, Arkansas. Last 4 in, San Diego State, Indiana, Boise State, Xavier. Now we get to the teams that are fighting for their lives here. First 4 out, Oklahoma, UNC, Texas, Nebraska. Next 4 out, Colorado State, Cincinnati, SMU, and Wake Forest. Now, Blake, we love to talk about headlines when it comes to the bubble. Who needs a win, who's the most desperate, who can punch their ticket, and what's going to be the most worth monitoring as we head into the weekend. I think when I look at this, I mentioned it earlier in the SEC video that we just posted. Check it out. It was our last video. Oklahoma and Texas battling it out. I mean, those teams are on the first 4 out line right now. This game has huge implications heading into the SEC tournament. Lenardi, I mean, as things stand, he has Oklahoma as the last team left out of the field. So you'd have to imagine getting a win against a common opponent that's on the bubble, which is a quad one team in Texas. That would be enough to propel them maybe into that last four in line, especially if you see one of those teams, San Diego State, Indiana, Boise State, or Xavier go down. So I think that's a crucial matchup for either of these teams. They could take a leap if one of them gets it done. Oklahoma, I think, needs it the most because they're the closest to being in the field where things stand. But Texas isn't too far off. And then another one I'm going to have my eyes on, Georgia, they get Vandy at home. Now, Vandy, they're safely in. Their bubble talks have been done for a couple of weeks now. But Georgia, obviously, they're on that last four bye projected by Lenardi. And disclaimer, Lenardi's bubble, I mean, it's a very good outlook of what the bubble looks like. We don't know if this is official, but usually Lenardi has a decent track record to predicting what the committee thinks when it comes to the bubble. But Georgia, they host Vandy. This is a chance, I think, to get them feeling safely into the tournament as we head into Nashville SEC tournament week. And I think this is one they really have to get to because a loss here, it doesn't ruin your tournament hopes, but I think that it might have you looking more likely to be in that last four in slot playing in Dayton at the first four. And if you can avoid that and just get straight into the tournament with a at-large bid, just regular, get your first-round opponent, don't have to worry about the first four and the extra game fatigue, that's big. So I think Georgia, Oklahoma, and Texas, those are the teams I'm going to be monitoring the most this weekend. But, Blake, I'll let you get your piece in here. What's the biggest bubble headline for you as we head into this weekend? What's really standing out to you here as we look at these games across the country and this bubble line that we have presented to us by Joey Brackets, who's having a hard time connecting to the call right now, but he's coming at some point.
Tar Heel Nation might love me after this one. I think North Carolina is the biggest headline going into this weekend. Like they're literally fighting for their lives. They're like, I think top 10 preseason, top 15. They fell off and not even in the bubble right now. They're on the outside looking in. But if they win this one, it definitely solidifies themselves as a tournament team. I think they got to win like one ACC tournament game. And with how bad the ACC really is this year, shouldn't be too big or too tall of a task to ask out of this UNC team. ACC tournament game wise. Duke, though, I mean, that's a whole different beast. They're going to have to win that game, and if they don't, then they can kiss their March Madness hopes goodbye. They can kiss RJ Davis goodbye. Like, I mean, this is a guy who's literally put on the UNC blue for, I think, this is his fifth year or something. Yeah, his fifth year.
5 years now.
And this is a guy who loves that program, and he's willing to die, literally, I don't know, figuratively, yeah, for this program because he's done a lot for him, and he's hit clutch shot after clutch shot. Hopefully tomorrow, if you're a Tar Heel fan, he can do so, and you guys can go on to March Madness.
I'll throw this one out here. Is Arkansas in a must-win tomorrow against Mississippi State? They're on the last four byes, but I feel like this would be one, you get this one, you go into Nashville, you maybe win one game, I think you're in the field safely, whereas if you lose, your outlook's kind of uncertain, I think. It's a little bit risky.
I would say it's must-win, but, I don't know. They probably should win, but if they don't win, they got to at least keep it semi-close because Mississippi State's been really struggling lately. They're still a quality team, but, I mean, their late-season struggles are evident, and, they're easily a team that can slip up to Arkansas. And after Arkansas just got their ass kicked, excuse my language, to South Carolina, and their SEC tournament run isn't looking the greatest, I guess. Looking at their seeding right now, and their matchups, I don't know. I do think they have to win tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm looking at their resume right now. Net-wise, they're 39. Their record against Quad 1 is 5-9. Their record against Quad 2 is 2-3. I mean, on paper, this looks like a resume where you'd say it really isn't. tournament worthy. But I mean, this bubble this year, it's pretty weak, to be quite honest with you. So I think that they could find themselves in. The best win on the year has to be probably the win against Kentucky or the one at home against Missouri. But then their other two quad one wins. I mean, one of them's against a Vandy team that, quality team. They're not the most outstanding of the quad one opponents, but then they've got a win against Michigan that came back in December. Arkansas and Michigan are both completely different teams right now. The only thing that I think that we'll be looking at if Arkansas does get left out of the tournament is when you turn over to their quad twos. Like the quad one losses, I mean, 5-9. It is what it is. You played in the best SEC that we've seen in God knows how long. Probably one of the best conferences ever, to be quite honest. But the quad two losses against LSU, Oklahoma, and South Carolina, if they get left out, I think those are going to be the ones that you point back to, and Cal's going to be kicking himself over if they do ultimately get left out of the field. But other minor notes when I look at this bubble overall, Wake Forest, they play Georgia Tech. Now, Wake Forest is currently on the next four out. You can kiss your tournament hopes goodbye if you slip up against Georgia Tech, because that is
Georgia Tech is awful.
That's not even a must-win game. That's a must-not-lose game. Like, you're expected to win that game. You just cannot lose that game. And then the rest of the bubble, I look around here, Cincinnati, I think their tournament hopes are kind of on life support right now. Same goes for SMU. I don't know if you see anything.
All those teams, I think you can just kiss it goodbye. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But I just don't think they have enough quad one wins to be able to sustain a tournament prayer, basically.
Yeah.
Like, they're really relying on their quad two, quad three wins right now to put them in the NCAA tourney. SMU, like, that, they're not good against quad one teams. I don't think they have a single quad one win this season. Wake Forest, they're really not a good team. And they're kind of paying the price of being in a weak ACC this year. Cincinnati, they kind of shot an arrow in their foot because they were hot early on. They look like a top 25 team. They were a top 25 team. But yeah, literally like the grown-up scene where he just goes and it hits him right in the foot.
Yeah.
That's Cincinnati's real-life representation. The Cincinnati team, besides like Jizzle James, that team's not very intriguing.
First team all-name guy, by the way, Jizzle James. That's a phenomenal name.
Yeah, that's an elite name. I love that name.
Basketball guy at its finest. Jizzle James.
I love that name, dude. Jizzle.
Phenomenal.
No Diddy, by the way.
Yeah, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're good. But yeah, I don't think anybody on that next four out. I don't think anybody on that next four out segment or part is worthwhile talking about this season. I don't think they have much of a pulse because I really think it just comes down to if these last four in teams, maybe the last four buys, somehow falter here the last game of the season, the regular season, and in conference play. So, I mean, I guess we'll see. A lot of big things, a lot of storylines starting to shift around the country. And going into next week with the SEC tournament, I think that's going to be a really big sign just because Georgia, Arkansas, those two teams being on the bubble. Then you got IU being in the Big Ten and the bubble. Like, these are all teams that could possibly screw themselves over, to put it nicely.
Indiana versus Ohio State this weekend. That's going to be a big one.
That's going to be a good game. Yeah, that's going to be a fun game to watch. Ohio State just put up a freaking NBA number. I think it was 114 points against Nebraska.
Yeah, that was
absolute
unreal.
Cinema. Late night banger.
Yeah, that game was crazy. I saw that one, but yeah, that next four out line, it really kind of is like a funeral home, really, to be honest with you. I don't see any of these teams propelling themselves unless some major shakeups happen on those lines above them. But we'll see. It's going to be intriguing to see how this bubble continues to develop as tomorrow goes and head into conference tournament week. But Blake, we've covered all of our bases for today. I think that about sums it all up. Our final regular season weekend preview video of the college basketball season.
Might shed a tear. I might shed a tear.
The full court trap pod has successfully covered one regular season of college basketball.
Yeah.
That
crazy
chills.
to think about. Literally chills.
We've
had some people come and go. We've had to make some moves. We've gotten some good ads. We got Brandy now. We got Jake. We got Sully. So I think here going towards March Madness, it's going to be a really fun time. Glad we're able to do this.
Yes, sir. We're going to be cooking up some ideas for Selection Sunday and all the other conference tournament actions as well. We've got plenty in store. Super excited to cover our first postseason in college basketball. Growing up watching this sport,
come on,
now getting
we do this, dude.
Yeah, we're in there, baby. But yeah, we'll get out of here, get this one edited out for the people to enjoy at their consumption before this big regular season finale. Everybody enjoy it, take it all in, and we'll head on into conference tournament weekend and moving on throughout the week. But for now,
appreciate you guys.
Luke Tackett and Blake Smith signing out. Full Court Trap Pod. Deuces.